But yeah, I definitely think that we're living in a time of crisis, sort of moral crisis. And I think that a lot of this has its roots in a sort of individualism and narcissism that has really reached epic proportions. And so, one of the things that I find so interesting about Chinese philosophy is the way that it really it was these ideas came about at a similar sort of time when there was a feeling of crisis, a crisis of values in society, and the focus in these in changing the world was to begin with changing how you live in your daily life.
I very much agree. I think we are living in a crisis of our values. We have taken now for granted for so long that we think we understand how the world works. We think we understand how to become better people. We should look within, find ourselves, find our true selves, be sincere and authentic to who we really are, embrace ourselves and love ourselves for who we are, and therefore we'll grow to have a life based on what really matters to us. And this sounds great. It sounds like a great liberatory vision of the self. And I think we're now hitting a moment where those ideas and the entire sort of economic world we've built around those ideas as well are really reaching a crisis point. And there's now a hunger for alternatives. And we find these ideas, particularly from China, offer a very fundamental challenge to a lot of our assumptions and a very powerful one that people find very exciting.
Well, in the eyes of Lao Tzu, one of the philosophers that we wrote about in our book, I think that we tend to have this idea that a great leader is someone who's very powerful and dominant and aggressive and assertive and is a really big presence in the room. And actually, what I find very interesting is that the idea that a good leader actually is someone who's very astute and very aware of all the relationships that are going on and works with those to become influential, not by sort of dominating, but by working with the mood of the people around him or her. And in that way, by reading people around that leader can become more influential than what our culture would tell us should be.
Yes, I think one of the things that we really need to learn is to realize that a lot of our assumptions about how to become an important leader, by dominating, controlling, being a great visionary to understand the world perfectly, these sound great, but they're potentially dangerous. And what a lot of these Chinese thinkers would say is look at other things as well. So, for example, look at your organization. Your focus should be on working with those under your employ, building the kind of organization within which people can really flourish. That's the type of organization that in the long run can do extraordinary things, because many people can always do more extraordinary things than one person, no matter how grand or how visionary. And it entails a very different vision of leadership as well, where you're not trying to dominate both your employees and dominate the world, but you're trying to work with people and build worlds within which they can flourish, and that's how you can build an extraordinary organization.
Well, I think that the first thing I would say is stop looking within and start thinking about small things that you can do every day to change your relationships and change the way that you respond to things that happen in the world and change the way that you look at your future or your past and everything that's going on right now. And it's not just a superficial make small changes and feel good about that. It really is this principle that when you make small changes, they have really huge implications down the line.
So I would say very much in agreement that instead of the idea that I can lead a good life by looking within, finding my true self, and living a life in which I can flourish is best for me, think on the contrary, how can I act in ways that will create worlds within which others around me, and therefore including myself, can flourish? And when you're asking a question that way, then the focus is all about the things we are doing that are affecting others all the time, noticing the bad things we're doing that are affecting others and therefore destroying ourselves as well, working on those, trying to build better situations for those around us and ourselves. And going back to, again, a question of an organization, how do I build an organization in which the focus is always these relationships and these interactions, and how can I build better interactions? And our larger goal, therefore, should be to try to create a world within which everyone can flourish, both at a very minor everyday level, an organizational level, ultimately even a global level. So often empires are done through power, and so it will be a single state that through its military force can dominate others. Oftentimes this is based on the personal ambition of a leader to show his personal greatness, that he can lead such strong armies to dominate others. And taking these ideas seriously from China, they would say any attempt to dominate others will always just breed resentment. So for brief periods of time, empires can work in a literal sense. They can have armies that will dominate others, but occupations in the long run never work, because always that breeds resentment and there'll always be opposition. Now, there are other ways of building successful organizations and even successful states, where the focus is to say not how can we dominate those around us, but how can we actually build worlds within which people can flourish. Looking at China during its most successful moments, the concern was, how do we build a state organization that is as open access as possible, that's focused on meritocracy, that's trying to build legal systems that will apply to everyone equally regardless of birth. And if you can create an open access system like that, what you then create is a world within which people realize if they try to cultivate themselves and try to become educated, there is true social mobility by doing so, and then you create a governance structure that's based on people so doing, and the idea is anyone from any walk of life, as long as they do so educate themselves, can succeed. And you create a very different value system, and historically we've seen a very, very successful social world.